So I'm really excited to be here. I saw the first Neurodiversity Summit at UC Davis last summer and was so impressed by it that I reached out to Patrick, who you can see as a co-author on this talk and the chapter it's based on. You're going to see a number of the co-authors and videos in this short talk, and you'll encounter two co-authors, Stephen Kapp and Emily Hotez, as moderators in the Q&A. So because we don't have a lot of time and we'd like to cover a lot of ground, we wanted to pose some questions to you up front that you could answer or pose additional questions you have throughout the talk. And Emily and Stephen will respond to your questions and ideas as the talk progresses. And the big picture question we want to ask you is what possibilities and or barriers you see to using the neurodiversity movement as a framework for cross-neurotype alliances. So just to remind you of what Susan said at the beginning of the conference, neurodiversity is just a fact. All brains are different. And this term was coined by Judy Singer and Harvey Bloom in the late 1990s. The neurodiversity paradigm evaluates this fact and says that it's good. And it points to the idea of normal as a culturally constructed fiction that is rooted in the eugenics movement. It highlights how society has a choice between embracing neurodiversity and the creativity and resilience that offers, or exacerbating existing power inequalities and the misery that leads to for many people. The neurodiversity movement fights back against those power inequalities and tries to build a more fully just society. It rejects normalization as an aim just for its own sake, but supports and advocates strongly for needed supports for adaptive skills and quality of life. So I just acted like the neurodiversity movement is a consistent movement where everyone agrees. But the reality is that there's a lot of different perspectives and leaders and theorists within the neurodiversity movement, and they don't all agree. And one of the key areas where people don't agree is about who the neurodiversity movement should represent. In this powerful position piece by an autistic self-advocate, Ayanna Balin, in Scientific American, she pointed out a very similar thing to what Heather was highlighting in the previous panel. When we talk about not pathologizing autism, we don't mean pretending autistic people don't have impairments. So many of the challenges associated with autism arise from a society that doesn't understand autistic people, but many neurodiversity advocates also recognize some challenges that are inherent to autism. In our work, we provide direct support for autistic adolescents and adults, but also aim to change society because so many of the challenges associated with autism arise from a society that doesn't understand autistic people. We use a participatory approach. In the next talk, you'll see one of the two co-founders of the participatory approach to autism research, Dora Raymaker. And in our work, neurodivergent students assume leadership roles, developing, delivering, and evaluating programming. The primary focus of most of our programming currently is a mentorship program for autistic college students and students with other disabilities called Project Reach by the College of Staten Island. It's a free program that's low intensity due to generous support from the FAR Fund. This term we're entirely online for obvious reasons. And we have an arts development group led by an actor and life coach with ADHD and a more structured skills development group led by two autistic graduate students, Jin and Bella, who used to be mentees and transitioned into becoming mentors. In this video, you'll see Bella and two other star mentors in Project Reach, Daniel and Sergey, share their insights about how we can build cross-neurotype alliances.
My name is Bella Kaufner. I'm currently a grad student at CSI. I joined the Project Reach program in 2016. I initially started out as a mentee, where the transitions from mentee to mentor. And I'm currently a coordinator in Project Reach, where I lead the Thursday structured group meetings. And some topics that we address in the group meetings are organization, where we plan and schedule and make goals, and the autism training, where participants had different perspectives when we do discussions and students type out in chat box and say what they would like to say. And some topics that were addressed in training are the myths that autistic people are not empathetic when really they do have empathy, and that autism was not caused by cold mothers and vaccines. And some people may not know that women are diagnosed with autism often late. And when working with neurotype people, they need to learn that patience is vital and scheduling with collaborative partners is important because you do not want to overwhelm them. And so you need to compromise what works best for you and your partners. And during the pandemic, it's important to reach out, especially when people may be going through mental health issues. And it's okay to have different perspectives because not everyone's going to have the same opinions and same ideas as you.
My name is Daniel Smeagol. I'm a mentor with Project Reach at the College of Staten Island. I am also a graduate student in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program. I also happen to have attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I just want to briefly speak about how individuals in different neurodivergent communities can work effectively together. I think it is very important to understand that everybody has their own strengths and their own weaknesses. It's normal. We're all humans. I think in order to work most effectively, we need to take a special interest in individuals and individual strengths. For example, the mentee I am currently working with has strengths in the area of creativeness and organization. I, as a person with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, have a weakness in time management. Together, we work together to keep ourselves on track, and it has been working beautifully. I encourage his creativity and his organization. He helps me with my time management and my organization. And together, we get things done that we would not have been able to get done independently.
So my name is Sergey. I'm a mentor with Project Reach, and I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and social anxiety disorder. For me, my ADHD comes with sensory difficulties and issues with processing speed. This really helps me empathize with my mentee because he also experiences sensory difficulties, and it helps me empathize with his social difficulties as well, because I've experienced a lot of social difficulties myself. And they have been perceived as different and throughout most of my life by others. And I was bullied in school, so it makes it easy for me to take the perspective of somebody else who has a lot of similar experiences. So currently my mentee is also planning on becoming a mentor with Project Reach. And I've been talking to him a lot about pursuing graduate school and graduating with honors, which is not something that his professors have brought up with him. And I think that all of us are used to being perceived for our weaknesses by some people as well. I think all of us have experienced that. And I think that it makes it easier for us to focus on somebody's strengths more and see their strengths more, rather than just focusing on the things that they can't do. And I think that makes it easier for us to take different approaches and to try different approaches, just as we had to do for ourselves to figure out what works for us.
As an autistic person myself, it's important that people are empathetic, towards their strengths and weaknesses, because those weaknesses should not define who they are as people. And also, be really patient, because you never know what the other person is going through in their life. Of course, everyone's not going to be perfect, but use this growth. If you have some biases towards people with different neurotypes, work on them by not negating how you really feel about people with different neurotypes.
I think that the fact that we have different strengths and different challenges and different political opinions and different likes and dislikes is just part of the human condition more generally. It's just something that makes us all human. And I think that people are generally respectful of others' differences when they don't perceive those people as being too different. So I think that in some ways people can be very respectful of others' differences, but not in others.
Sergey is really highlighting that people in general try to understand people, but they have a harder time understanding people who have different neurotypes than them. So a lot of our work focuses on trying to change stigma towards autism using participatory training. You can see on the left a training developed in collaboration with autistic university students, and a training on the right developed with autistic scholars, including Heather Brown and Patrick and TC Weissman, my primary collaborator. Both of these trainings are or will be available open access. And in this video, you'll see Christopher Constantino, who is also here, sharing his insights as a leading stuttering researcher and clinician and person who stutters about using the neurodiversity movement as a source of cross-neurotype solidarity.
Hello, my name is Christopher Constantino. I'm a speech language pathologist and an assistant professor at Florida State University. I work clinically with people who stutter. I study stuttering, and I'm a stutterer myself. Stuttering is not often associated with the neurodiversity movement. However, the ideas apply to it very well. And I'd like to use stuttering as an example of how the neurodiversity movement can be expanded to include more neurotypes. Neurodiversity is not the next politically correct way to refer to a certain constellation of disorders like autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. Rather, neurodiversity is a political concept, a category to add to intersectionality. In the same way that we all belong to a social class, we're all gendered and we're all raced, we all have variations in our neurological makeup. Neurodiversity does not place value on predetermined norms of structure and function, but on a diversity of structure and function. People of different neurotypes add value to society. Society is stronger because of neurodiversity. Importantly, neurodiversity has a nuance to recognize that all neurotypes come with benefits and challenges. The paradigm shift here is that we can address the challenges without normalizing the individual. To use stuttering as an example, I can help someone who stutters without making them fluent. The neurodiversity movement dares us to think critically about why people experience challenges. Is it inherent to being a neurominority, or is it due to society's inability to accommodate them? Do therapeutic and medical interventions aim to improve quality of life, or aim to make neurominorities appear more neurotypical? For those of you unfamiliar, stuttering is a neurological condition that often results in disfluencies of speech. These disfluencies are not inherent to stuttering, but are the speaker's reaction to an internal feeling of losing control of their speech. A person is talking and all of a sudden what they want to say is interrupted and they stumble. Where you, as a listener here, is the speaker wrestling to regain control of their speech mechanism and struggling to continue forward through speech. Stuttering is often described as a feeling of a loss of control or of being stuck. Speakers try to fight through this stuckness and their speech becomes very effortful and struggled. Stuttering makes speaking labored and it can make it difficult to talk or express yourself. However, there is no reason that having disfluencies in your speech should, as the literature suggests it does, lead to increased psychological distress, decreased labor market outcomes, and decreased quality of life. These have less to do with stuttering than with society's acceptance of it. In fact, much of the difficulty of stuttering stems not from the disfluencies themselves, but from how others react to them. The literature is replete with evidence that there is societal prejudice against stuttering. People who stutter are bullied as children and discriminated against as adults. Unfortunately, stuttering therapy often colludes with society in devaluing stuttered speech. Many of our therapies attempt to maximize fluent speech at the expense of spontaneity and ease of talking. People are taught to exert great effort to speak fluently. This is not an enjoyable way to talk, and the literature shows that it often leads to relapse and poor compliance because people who stutter are not satisfied with it. An important takeaway from the neurodiversity movement is that, to quote Ari Neiman, trying to make someone normal isn't always the best way to improve their life. Likewise, trying to make stutterers fluent is not always the best way to improve their lives. Developing therapy objectives that correspond with and embrace the stutterer's identity as a stutterer while making speech easier and less effortful may better align with the priorities of the individual in therapy. By valuing neurodiversity, we empower people who stutter to see society's reaction to their speech as the problem and not their disfluencies. We see the objective of therapy as increasing quality of life rather than normalization of fluency. Also, people who stutter begin to see themselves politically. They see that their struggle is shared by other neurominorities. The objectives of accommodation, inclusion, and access are the same. Neurodiversity is an effective political tool to raise the consciousness of stutterers and bring them into solidarity with others. A society that is more accepting of neurominorities is also more accepting of stutter.
And so the key point we wanted to leave you with is that each neurodivergent community has its own history, its own sense of what's possible and what barriers might be insurmountable. And so by collaborating across neurotypes, we expand what's possible. And these are the questions we posed at the beginning. And we'll put the contact information for some of the co-authors in the chat, as well as the link to a chapter where we go into more depth about all of this than we could here. So thank you.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with the promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.